In Between Fantasy Football Podcast, Season 4. Let's go, baby. Yeah. There was a time I had trouble talking about it. Congratulate them, we know they doubted. Somehow we made it up out the pit, back against the wall, never quit. Traversing through each obstacle, show a non-believer what's possible. Let nothing they could do stand in between me and my wildest dreams. Let's go. Nothing that come at us could come in between. Life gave me the worst, yet my side grew so green. We've been down in the dirt, been tossed in the trash, but I never strayed from my path. When we're gone, we ain't looking back.
Maybe we were all way too high. Maybe that's our fault.
It's going to be a crazy time, but it's going to be a fun time.
Life is boring if you don't take some chances and do some things outside the box.
Your destination for both some feel-good lifestyle advice and some fantasy football advice. All right. Welcome in. It is September 20th, 2022. Week 2 was one for the comeback kids, baby. Something we love here at In Between Media. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Seth, Nate, and Scott back here with you. We got the vibes flowing on a Tuesday. Fall is in the air. Football in full swing, baby. Guys, how are you feeling? The season is just heating up, my friends.
I'd be feeling better if my individual fantasy team's doing better. But you know what? Just part of this whole puzzle. I'm ecstatic that football's. There were multiple just exciting weekend, big comebacks. Lots of studly performances weeks. You got studs out there doing their stud thing, winning weeks for people. So, yeah, it's early. It's only week 2.
Nate, how are you feeling, my friend?
Dude, it was a wild weekend of red zone. Like, watching Tyreek go off for 4 touchdowns against Baltimore. What was that? What was that? Josh Allen was ridiculous. Stephon Diggs last night was ridiculous. Just incredibly. It was a wild weekend. And the Jets beat the Browns. Joe Flacco, look what he played.
Joe Cool, baby. The real Joe Cool.
I'm all for the Jets. I don't root against any team anymore doing what we do. We spend too much time talking about players across the league. I like this Jets team with Joe Flacco. Seth, I'm not going to lie. I can buy into the frisky Jets with Joe Flacco.
Dude, the frisky Jets, I've been saying it all off season long. And, while they still might not be the best team, they're fun as hell to watch. And Joe Flacco's getting it done out there. It really was a weekend of highs and lows. I think a lot of this we projected out to come our way. And then there was a lot that we didn't project out, like Devontae Adams, 2 receptions. What was that all about? Just craziness all the way up and down the board. Tonight, guys, we have a really jam-packed show for you. We're going to have week 2 winners and losers. What are the takeaways? What should you be thinking about heading into week 3? We're also going to talk a little more about week 3, talking about the players who underperformed and overperformed this week, and talk about what their fantasy futures hold and should you be buying or selling them here early on in the season. Because while it is week 2, or going into week 3, you still got to be making trades, guys. You still got to be active out there. And then we're going to round it out with our In the Scope segment, talk about the surface waiver wire additions you can grab tonight, Tuesday, or the next day, the free agent finds who are a little bit more buried down there. Save you guys some fab. Guys, I'm feeling ecstatic. We got Albert here in the chat. Good to see you, Albert.
Albert, twice today I've seen.
Yeah, a little Albert action in there. We got Royal Slade. Evening, fellas. Hope your week off is off to a great start. We appreciate that, Slade. Always, man. And then Brad Bull. Hey, fellas. Good to see you, Brad, all the way out there in Australia. Man, guys, we have the best people who consistently tune into this show every single week, man. If we can ever make their viewing experience, listening experience any better, please reach out. Let us know if we can ever help you with a fantasy football question. I think our DMs are always open. Is that right, guys?
Always open. And Mr. Scampers, if you're out there, we're waiting for you to show up. We miss you.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and get things ripping tonight. We have a loaded show, so let's jump right into it with headline hijinks. So for every winner of week 2, there was an equally disappointing, humiliating, even terrifying loser, my friends. So Nate, start us off. Who's your week 2 loser?
So my week 2 loser is Derrick Henry managers. How the mighty have fallen here. Fall of a titan, if you will. The dude's a running back, I think, and I know this because of an article that Jen wrote for Rasball today. Shout out Rasball, shout out Jen. He's like running back 36 on the season right now. For a guy who was going as high as he was, and Tennessee looks like they're in trouble. I mean, if Malik Willis is there next up and Ryan Tannehill's playing this poorly, this is not going to go well for Tennessee.
Yeah, and I think we at least I projected Tennessee to have a down year. Like I was not surprised. I bet against them in week 1. I bet against them in week 2 again, and they'll probably be a team I continue to fade. It's not a great offensive line. They had to cut some of their better offensive linemen due to cap casualties this summer, guys. So I was a little concerned about that. Treylon Burks looks okay. Kyle Phillips looks okay, but it doesn't look like they have solidified playmakers. Scott, are you concerned with Derrick Henry long-term here, or do you think he gets back on track here?
I mean, I'm definitely concerned at this point. I mean, there's a number of players right now that I'm concerned about, but I've also been playing long enough to know that a lot of guys start off slow. There's been a tweet circling around the last few days that talked about, after 2 games where Jonathan Taylor was and where Mark Andrews was 1 year ago today. And so, I mean, with someone like Derrick Henry, I mean, there's not much you can do about it right now. You're not going to be able to trade him for anything that's worth what anywhere near what you paid for him. You kind of just have to ride it out. I have Kamara on one of my teams, spent a pretty high pick on him, and I'm having the same types of fears around it. But again, this isn't necessarily the time to panic and start getting cute and starting like waiver wire scrubs over Derrick Henry just because he hasn't really gone off yet. I mean, all your players aren't going to smash every single week. So I would say, but with some of these players we're going to talk about tonight, it's more than just it's early. It's concerning. So
right.
I'd put Derrick Henry in that group.
I think that I'm not necessarily concerned long-term for Derrick Henry, and you're right, Scott. You can't move him, and nobody's trying to move him, I don't think. It's 2 weeks, and we know it's early. But for the first 2 weeks, I mean, you're riding a guy who's putting up 7 points, and that's hard. If he's even putting up 7, I think he makes a rebound. He's going to have to be the focal point for this team. I don't think there's any way around it with as bad as they are. So the production's coming, but, I mean, this week, if you rolled him out, I hope you had Tua. I hope you had Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. We got a message here from Albert in the chat. Are you guys worried about Dalvin Cook? We got Dalvin Cook coming up a little bit later in temperature check. We're going to talk about that, Albert. Yeah, I agree. It was a bad week for Derrick Henry fans, for his fantasy managers as well. But, guys, I think there's a fan base that suffered even a little bit more than Derrick Henry. And we'll go to my headline next here. My week 2 loser, the 49ers faithful. First of all, rest up Trey Lance, man. Like we hope the best for you. He suffered a season-ending ankle injury. Pretty tough one to watch there for him. Just getting going. He hasn't played a lot of football in the last 2 years. By the time he gets on the field, it's really going to be 3 years next year. So sad to see him go. We hope the best for him. But this is a fantasy football show, guys. We do have fantasy football implications to talk about. Jimmy Garoppolo stepped right in, looked like his old self here early on in week 2 here. I was excited to see what he could do. Are you guys concerned at all with the 49ers passing game, 49ers offense in general? Because to me, in a way, this is a little bit of an upgrade, as sad as that is to say.
I'm with you. It's an upgrade.
Scott?
Oh, sorry. Cut out there for a second. Yeah, it's a weird situation, because I was on the side of thinking Trey Lance was going to figure it out this year and he was going to be a really good fantasy quarterback, but I still had my concerns about his style of play and what that would mean for the other pass catchers on the team. So Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, there was so much trade rumor, up until really recently that he was going to be shipped. It was Trey Lance's team. And so obviously now it's like, oh, it's a really good thing they didn't ship him because now he's their quarterback. So, I mean, he is as far as backup quarterbacks, which is what he was, one of the better ones in the league. I kind of agree. I think it's a slight bump for like Brandon Ayuk.
Right.
Because the thing is we've seen what these pass catchers and what these players can do with Garoppolo. With Trey Lance, it was still based on speculation. It was still based on a little bit of hype. So I don't think it's not the death nail it would be on other teams. Like for the Cowboys, it's a lot bigger deal that Dak is out than Trey Lance in San Francisco.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
Scott, I'm right there with you. I've never really trusted Trey Lance anyway as a professional quarterback. I have a good friend, big time college guy. He told me in the draft when San Francisco took Trey Lance, said, "Look, this guy played at a small school. He hasn't faced NFL level talent. He's a raw talent to begin with. It's not like Steve McNair at Alcorn State where the guy was performing like throwing 600 yards a game because the competition was so beneath him. I think there's a chance that Lance could still develop into a good NFL quarterback. I'm not saying, but he's not ever going to live up to the third pick overall in the draft. That said, this is an upgrade. This is a massive upgrade for Deebo Samuel, for Brandon Ayuk, for George Kittle, and for their run game, because now teams have to respect the pass. So Jeff Wilson Jr., when Elijah Mitchell comes back, these are guys that are going to be valuable in fantasy because Jimmy Garoppolo is there and Trey Lance is out. It sucks that this is how it happened. I hate to see it, but it was going to happen this season anyway.
I don't think it was, Nate. I think you're being a little critical. I think you're being a little critical on Trey Lance. I don't think they could bench him. I think there was like a thing that you can't go back once you make the decision, and because then you're just shattering the kid. That's my opinion. I know
this is the NFL's business, man. Like, the goal is to win a Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan wants a Super Bowl.
That's
they
true,
sniffed
but I'll
it
tell
last
you,
season.
If I've learned one thing as a Seahawks fan, is that the front office also likes to be right. They also want to make sure that their investments, they want to make sure that looks like it was the right,
That's true.
For better or for worse. And I mean, unfortunately, we'll never know whether he would have gotten benched, whether he wouldn't have.
Useless conjecture at this point.
Yeah, fantasy.
Too bad.
Fantasy
it is just too bad
here, guys. Deebo Samuel, I think you give him a slight bump. Same with Ayuk a little bit, and George Kittle's back this week, hopefully. So, that's good signs all around. I think they're going to need to lean a little bit more on this passing game than initially thought. Jeff Wilson Jr., he's going to take the reins here, and Nate's guy, Tyrion Davis-Price, he got banged up in this one. He's going to miss a couple weeks too. So it's Jordan Mason, it's Jeff Wilson Jr. I believe, did they just make I think I just saw across my news feed too that they just
Marlon Mack. They said Marlon Mack.
Yep. So there are moves being made here in San Francisco, but the passing game, I think it did get a little bit of a bump. Scott, why don't you go ahead and take us away with your biggest fantasy football loser of week number 2?
This one follows Seth's theme, and I'll start with my hijinksy headline, and it's Lions and Tigers and Bears. Oh my. It's the Bears, and specifically the passing game. So, I mean, this is one that's been a hot topic on this podcast. It's been a hot topic in the fantasy community in general. I sent out a tweet a few days ago giving my compadre here, Seth, some props for now being completely right about this. I didn't think that the Bears were going to be a good offense. I think they were going to be a good team. I thought there would be enough, at least, to support some fantasy relevance. And honestly, at this point right now, it does not look like there is. Darnell Mooney's kind of just a guy. I mean, he was one of my highest praises this offseason.
I know.
He's I'm not, a lot of people are saying, he's droppable. I'm not dropping him yet. I am. Here it comes. I am dropping Cole Kmet. It's one of those things where he might have a few good games here and there, but like, that's 2 goose eggs in a row. And I lost a game by a few points with him at tight end. So at a certain point, you got to kind of lick your wounds and be like, for now, it's not panning out. And so I'm going to get myself a different tight end, but you've also got to be able to do that. Like we said earlier, not with like Derrick Henry and things like that, but there's some players you kind of just got to cut bait and you've got to pivot. And he is one of those for me right now. But I mean, they ran like 40 plays against Green Bay. I mean, it was just a ridiculously bad showing. To me, what it looked like that game, what that looked like, is it looked like what a team looks like when mid-game their quarterback gets hurt. They bring in their backup and they just kind of run it a bunch and don't really do much. That's what it looked like, and that's their starting offense. Like it was really bad. Now Green Bay, very good defense. So, not a lot to expect there, but I can't trust anybody, really.
You can't
Maybe
trust
Montgomery,
anyone.
but
Yeah, and I think this is a product of, I mean, guys, we talked about it. This is a first-time offensive coordinator, it's a defensive head coach. I mean, you just lost a game and you passed 11 times. Tell me how that makes sense. This isn't the monsoon that we saw last year with Mac Jones where you get away with that. So I'm just stunned by what happened. And I guess I shouldn't really say stunned because I've been fading the Bears all offseason. I've been fading this entire passing game. Guys, like I think at some point, and maybe it's not like maybe we don't have to totally panic quite yet, but I mean, I don't know, man. I haven't seen it out of Justin Fields out of maybe 1 or 2 games last season that he can be a starting quarterback. But when you have an offensive line who can't protect for you, you have offensive weapons who can't get open for you. I think it's a tough sledding, and it's a bad situation he came into.
Yeah, well, the thing is,
I was just going to say real quick. You brought up the offensive line. I mean, I was watching that game closely because, I wanted Kmet to go off so I could be right, but it didn't happen. But, there were multiple plays where I saw Kmet running a route near the goal line. Looked like he had had some separation, but before Fields could even look, he was sacked. He was just swallowed by the defense. So,
yep. Well, that's the thing. This offensive line is so bad that they signed Alex Leatherwood. Like, think about that they were so depleted that they signed the worst player on an almost as bad offensive line that was released after being a first-round pick. Justin Fields, I feel bad for the guy because I'm kind of wondering, like, was Matt Nagy that bad compared to what Matt Eberflus is doing right now?
Okay, yo.
Maybe, I'm not saying that Matt Nagy was good and Matt Nagy needed to go, but Eberflus might have been a step down.
But no, I agree completely. And I was the only one saying that I was just saying, like, Matt Nagy did take this team to 2 playoff appearances with Mitchell Trubisky. So I'm not trying to defend him, but I'm just saying, like, people thought this was such an upgrade over Matt Nagy, and I don't think it was. Like the Bears need to look themselves in the mirror. I saw a lot of TikToks of pissed off Bears fans, and like rightfully so, but
sure.
I just think bottom line for fantasy guys moving forward, you can drop Cole Kmet if you haven't already. And I think if you want to, I think you can send Darnell Mooney to the bench. And after he has one blow-up game, try and get out of him. Because this Bears offense is not something you want to be a part of, other than if you have to play David Montgomery as an RB2, if you have to.
Yep.
I will say there have been some comments in the chat about, maybe panicking a little bit. It's 2 weeks in because I know there's another situation we're going to be talking about in a second where it's like, oh, it's just the first few games, the team's getting used to each other, don't panic over in Nate's neck of the woods. So I mean that is also something to consider. Yes, this is Eberflus's first time in this situation, but maybe it's going to take the Bears a few weeks to get it figured out. So I'm not rage dropping Darnell Mooney yet. I'm fine with Kmet at this point. But I am.
Nate, are you willing to do it, Nate? He was your all-in pick.
Dude, at this point, I can't afford to. He's going to have to hang out on my bench. He's not my only tight end in any league, but I can't.
I'm talking about a league where he's my only tight end.
Well, I've got a league where I have to start 2 tight ends,
and Cole Kmet's one of them.
He's one of 4 tight ends, but like I can't afford to drop him because. Imagine a league that deep trying to be deep at tight end. The fact that I have 2 startable tight ends is a miracle.
All right. Well, we've talked about Cole Kmet, the Bears enough. We always do. And we always, it always ends in the same thing.
He's no Cameron Brate.
Okay. I'll take that one, Scott, because that's fair. That is fair. Nate, who's your week 2 winner?
Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean... Amon-Ra St. Brown managers have to be over the moon because they believed in the guy when a lot of people, myself included, even though I called his breakout at the end of last season, I still didn't think when they brought in DJ Chark, I just didn't think it was going to be a thing. TJ Hawkinson was coming back, which we've seen has proved to not mean anything at all. He's been as those managers who rostered him against our wishes, he's been amazing for them. He's proved them right.
Well,
And kudos to them.
and I'll
And
say I don't think we were ever against Amon Ra. Well, I don't think we barely talked about him all offseason, though, to be honest. We never really talked about him.
I thought he was going too high. Him and Gabe Davis for my two wide receivers, it was like, okay, their cost is prohibitive. I'm not really probably going to have any of them rostered, and I don't. I'm okay with that with Gabe Davis still, but with Amon Ra, I wish I had looked a little bit more into what happened last season. And he's the wide receiver 1 in this offense. DJ Chark is a wide receiver 2. Somebody we're going to talk about later is the new wide receiver 3 in this offense that I'm excited about. Jared Goff has been effective too, and I think that's maybe something we didn't expect.
Yeah, I mean, Amon Ra's been fantastic, Nate. 24 targets, 17 receptions for him, 180 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And, I mean, he's the wide receiver 4 right now in fantasy, off a 39.9 performance here. And, 2 for 68 on the ground, guys. Like, he got it done. Like, he kind of looks like a mini version of Deebo Samuel out there. Yep. The way he's versatile for this team, he's making big plays happen. And yeah, credit to Jared Goff. He made it happen. Rest of season, guys. Like I think Amon Ra to me is like a top 15 guy at least.
Yeah, he could be a wide receiver 1 tier guy.
He could be. I mean, after the success that a few mid-round wide receivers have had the last few years, Diggs going where he went, and then Kupp and Debo going where they went. There's a lot of this offseason spent like, okay, who's that mid-round guy that could ascend? And Juju was a name that was thrown around, but right now it's looking like it's going to be ARSB. That's who it's looking like it's going to be from that mid-round range, jumping up to a potential wide receiver 1. I mean, dude is legit.
Yep.
They have all their pass catchers back. They are a pass-happy team. I mean, Detroit's kind of onto something, if you ask me. Like, I mean, they put up 35 on the Eagles. The Eagles just made the Vikings look silly. And then Detroit put up 35 on them. I think they're going to be a fun team to watch. They're going to be an easy team for me to root for. It's just the same as the Bengals last year. It's just a team that hasn't had success lately. And Amon Ra, he was faded. He was faded by a lot of people. And so, yeah, it's all good with him.
And the one thing I'll say about Detroit, kind of closing the book there, guys, is their offensive line has played okay, but I think their offensive line has a lot more potential to play even better. Yes, Nate, you're kind of the offensive line guru here. Would you agree with that assessment?
Well, they had their line actually by the end of last season was performing decently.
Right.
And then they made some moves in the offseason where they got better. And this is a crew that's learning to play together. But I think by midseason, this might be a top 10 offensive line. They're already playing well together. They're giving Jared Goff more time to throw. And it's showing. For a team that throws the ball 60% of the time, to have that additional little bit of protection, it's going to open up guys like DeAndre Swift. It's going to open up Amon Ra for some bigger plays. It's a team that's working well together, which I think is kind of unexpected.
I'm just going to go rest of season here, and you just tell me. I just need a yes or no, nothing else. Rest of season, Keenan Allen, Amon Ra, St. Brown.
Yes or no?
Yeah, Amon Ra or yeah. Okay, I guess Amon Ra or the other person.
I'm Amon Ra there.
Okay. What about AJ Brown?
AJ Brown.
Amon Ra.
What about let's go with Mike Williams.
Amon Ra.
Yeah, Sun God.
Cortland Sutton.
Amon Ra.
Amon Ra, yep.
Mike Evans.
Mike Evans.
Close, man. Probably Evans.
There's more touchdown production out of Evans.
I'm loving my roster ship of him this week. Suspended.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for him for sticking up for Tom Brady.
I agree.
Sick of people picking on Tom.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that's great discussion on Amon Ra, guys. Let's go ahead and shift gears here. Scott, what is your week 2 winner? Let's bring some positivity back to the winner.
Is a running back that I swear just no one ever talks about, except saying, nope, he's not a good value where he's getting drafted. And that's Nick Chubb. And I'll preface that with the current RB1 in PPR formats, Nick Chubb. A guy that, I mean, yes, I don't think no one's ever argued his talent. He's probably one of the best complete running backs in the league. He's always had a really high yards per carry. The knock has always been he doesn't get enough catches, which is I'm not rolling my eyes at that. That is a legitimate knock. in PPR formats. But this season, I'm still not hearing his name called. And he's averaging about 20 carries a game, about 100 yards a game. He had three touchdowns in this past game. And this past game, and I know this is probably more of an outlier, but he did out-target Kareem Hunt in this past game 3-2. So I just think he's one of those running backs that like he just never gets talked about. It's so weird. I just haven't heard his name. I haven't seen him on my timeline at all this season. And he's the RB1. So he had a smash week. I know they lost the game, but I love to see Nick Chubb do well, even though it's what could have been if the Seahawks had taken him instead of Penny.
Yeah, and he's been great. People are kind of trashing him a little bit, Scott, just because he got that last touchdown. Which, I mean, you get the extra point there. I don't think it's no harm, no foul. Also, the Browns are just idiots. Let's just say that. But I completely agree with you here. The RB1, and in a lot of leagues, guys, I got him in like the middle of a third round, and that's in a 12-team league. So he was faded a lot. Obviously, Kareem Hunt's always going to steal a little bit of production, but if he can have a floor of about 10 fantasy points and then, do something like this on a spike week, you're going to love it. And, we always kind of saw this out of Nick Chubb. When he gets the carries, he's a monster. His best season came in 2019. He had 300-plus carries that year. I don't think he'll get quite to 300 looking at the pace right now, but it's going to be up there, and I think he'll be a valuable asset as long as he stays healthy here.
Well, the way that this offense is trending right now, absolutely. They kind of, with Brissett, you want to throw the ball as little as possible. But also, to be fair, Carolina and the Jets are two very poor defenses.
Very, very
against
good
the
point.
run. Yep. Now we're looking, they've got Pittsburgh week 3. Not super excited to play him in that one, but you're starting him.
And no TJ Watt, so I'm more comfortable with it.
That's true. Ooh,
they were ran on last week. Damian Harris ran them right out of the building, honestly.
That's true. That's very true. Then they've got Atlanta, which that's a great matchup for him. Then you've got the Chargers, New England, and Baltimore. So really, like if you look at that, the only game I'm looking at here that I don't at least kind of like the matchup is the Chargers.
I'll be honest, like looking at the way these round 1 and round 2 RBs performed, I don't know what I would trade Nick Chubb for. Like there's a lot of you could probably trade him straight up right now for maybe a Najee or maybe a Derrick Henry. And I don't know if I would do that, guys.
I'm not doing that.
Doesn't that sound crazy though? Doesn't that sound crazy? Like a couple weeks ago.
No, it doesn't sound crazy.
Well, now it doesn't, but a couple weeks ago it might have.
I mean, I always thought like he was faded into, beyond the RB10 spot.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was too low. I mean, I don't have a lot of shares because I also subscribe to that where he was going, kind of where you're getting him. I'm not really taking a running back there. I will tell you though, in Paulie's playoff in that league, somehow, some way, he fell to the 5th round. It's super flex, but like,
right.
I have him as my flex running back. Yeah.
Very nice. Guys, I want to get to a question here from our guy, Caden, the Colts fan over on YouTube. Appreciate you tuning in tonight, Caden. Should I trade Kupp and Javonte for Adams, Swift, and Davis? I imagine that means Gabe Davis, and hopefully not Mike Davis, Caden. Man, that's a...
I don't think I'd do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kupp's upside is too high, and Javante's upside compared to Swift is too high.
I think
I would reverse that.
Okay,
I think Swift's got way more upside.
So I would
if this is redraft.
Yeah, I would say Swift over Javonte. It's Swift over Javonte here.
Yeah.
But then is Cooper Kupp worth splitting? Here's what I'll say, Caden. This is the best advice I can give to you. Okay, says I'm very deep at wide receiver, nothing at RB. Maybe I would try to get maybe like another small RB throw in. Then if you need some RBs, like I don't think it's a bad trade, but especially if you're deep at wide receiver, I never want to give up the best player in a trade, which I think you are doing though in this.
I think
you're giving up 190 targets, almost guaranteed in Cooper Kupp. And Javonte Adams has become the lead back, and as this team gels, Javonte Williams will finish as a top 5 running back if this team can put it together. He'll have enough volume. And even if they don't, he might still. If they start to lean on the run. Just
I mean,
saying.
I stand by that Swift has a higher ceiling and more upside than Javonte, because
I agree.
he's already somewhat of the lead back, and he gets, he takes it to the house on pretty much any pass thrown to him. I'm probably not doing this deal though, because I'll tell you, I would probably be thinking about it a lot heavier if the most puzzling result to me this entire week was Devonte Adams having like 2 catches against that Cardinals defense. I thought he was going to go full ham and eggs on that team. Now, he did get the touchdown. So had he gone full ham and eggs, I might be thinking about this a little differently. So it's a little bit of recency bias with a down game from Adams, but it did show that there can be a down game from Adams in that new offense. Whereas Kupp, I mean, you see the stats from last year. It looks like he's right back on tracks. Kupp was a wide receiver one like 88% of the weeks last year. It wasn't just like spike weeks. It was every week. So I think in this one, and I do really like Javonte Williams. I'm not trying to say that at all. I'm just saying that I have Swift a little bit higher. Yeah. But in this one, I think Kupp has separated himself to the point where I'm keeping Kupp and Javonte.
I'm with you, Scott. I think it's a very enticing trade. I would say if you could get a little more value back, then I would consider it. But it is very hard to give up Cooper Kupp, who possibly could be the number 1 wide receiver again. I still love Adams. I love Gabe Davis, but he's a little banged up too. Nate, are you kind of in agreement then that you wouldn't do this?
No, I definitely wouldn't do it. I was in agreement before you were in agreement.
Awesome. Well, Caden, we appreciate the question, man. Feel free to stick around. We have waivers. If you have any waiver questions, any other trade questions, send them our way. Hope you like the content, subscribe, and stick around. Come back with the rest of our IBT family around here. Nate, why don't we go ahead and move forward? I think I just have one winner left here, and then we can jump forward.
Let's do it.
Temperature check. So my winner, no surprise here, week Tua, baby. Tua shows up here in week 2. And he's someone that I was out on for a lot of the offseason. I started to change my tune a little bit. And I think it's because I saw the upside of what Mike McDaniels brings. I think we all saw that. I think we saw the upside of having Tyreek and Tyreek and Jalen Waddle in this offense as well. Awesome week for Tua, 36 for 50, six touchdowns, 469 yards, 2 picks. 4 of those touchdowns did come in the fourth quarter. Keep that in mind, Nate. I think you pointed that out earlier today to me. And then Tyreek, 11 for 113, guys, 190 yards, 2 touchdowns, over 40 PPR points for him. And then Jalen Waddle didn't want to be left out of the action either. 11 for 19 targets for Jalen Waddle, an absurd amount. And we finally saw the upside come together. 171 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, and 40.1 PPR points. So, guys, it was really a special day for the Miami Dolphins here. I think at the end of it, this means more for the receivers than it does for Tua going forward. I think Tua could be a borderline top 12 QB, especially with how some of those bottom-end QB1s are performing. But I think Tyreek, I think Jalen Waddle can both finish as top 15 wide receivers. I think that's how we always thought about it. But it was a great day to see it from them.
So we've had 2 people that we know, that one of them everyone knows, compare Waddle and Hill to Mark Clayton and Mark Duper in Miami previously. One of them was friend of the show, Michael Stoyanov.
Okay. Yeah, old Mike Stoy, yeah.
Yeah, so and here's the thing. Like, I think it's a fair comparison because these were 2 guys who got fed by Dan Marino their whole careers in Miami because they just threw the ball a ton because they never had any good running backs, maybe Sammy Smith for a year or whatever. But this is a similar offense because look at their running backs. They've got Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert. They're not going to do much with those guys. They've already shown that. They're going to air the ball out. Now, it's not going to be as good for Tua as you would hope, more than likely, because he's probably not going to be as accurate. Baltimore's secondary isn't great.
Yeah, they left Tyreek open a lot for sure.
A lot. But here's the thing is that Waddle and Hill can both be wide receiver 1s in this offense. You need to calm down on Tua just a little bit. He's not going to put up 50 to 60 fantasy points for you every week. He threw 6 touchdowns. What was impressive is that he did what he had to do when he had to do it. And that is a trait that you see in Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Jim Kelly, John Elway, Dan Marino could do it. Warren Moon could do it. Something we've watched Tom Brady do time after time. I need 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. I can do it on this defense. I'm going to do it. That was impressive. But guys, he's not going to throw another 6-touchdown game, and he's not going to throw for 6,000 yards this season. He probably wouldn't even hit 5,000 yards. 4,800 yards, you can sell me on that. 35 to 40 touchdowns, you can sell me on that. That's still a QB. You think that's too high?
If he
in an offense is going to throw the ball to
35
Tyreek Hill, the thing is that you're looking at two receivers that are phenomenal with yards after the catch.
Nate, if he has 35 touchdowns, he's a QB1. That's
what I'm saying. I'm saying that I'm saying he could do it. I'm not saying I can be sold on that number. I'm not saying I think he's going. I think he's a 25 to 28 touchdown guy. I think he's in that 35 to 4,000 yard range this season. But I think he probably also throws like 20 picks, 22 picks, somewhere around in there. QB 12, QB 13, QB 14, I think is like realistic. His ceiling though could be QB 5.
Yeah, I mean, for me with Tua, it's he was one of those guys too. I wasn't really in or out on him. I just where he was at based on the market, I was like, okay, and it's not that I just think he's the most talented quarterback, but I mean, Seth said it. The Mike McDaniel's head coach, that is what I trust.
Yeah.
I trust that they, after 2 games, have basically a 70% wide receiver target share, which I believe is tops in the league. They throw to their receivers. They throw a lot. And with those 2 playmakers, 2 just home run hitters, yeah, he's not going to throw 60 touchdowns, 6,000 yards. That would be absolutely ridiculous. But for someone like me who on a team where my only quarterback was Trey Lance, Tua is by far my number 1 waiver priority this week. That's who I want if I don't want to stream. It's going to be tough sledding this first week in Buffalo. There's going to be some ups and downs. But he showed you the types of games he can have. And again, I trust that coach. I mean, his two first games as a head coach, he took down Belichick and Harbaugh.
I really like what Mike McDaniel's doing in that system. I think their defense has improved. Their offensive line is sneaky good. Like I've been impressed with what they have, and they have so many running backs that they can cycle through. Like they've taken injury almost out of the equation when they're running back.
Here's the question, though, guys. Just to ask this: is this an opportunity to sell high if you have one of these Miami wide receivers? Would you consider it?
Nope.
I wouldn't. I mean, every player after they have a smash game is a sell high, but these are 2 players where I'm just I'm going to enjoy this ride with my players and not try to make some kind of move.
Would you trade them for either one of them for Devontae Adams?
Nope.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would trade Waddle for Adams in a second.
What about Tyreek?
That's like a top 3 receiver you're getting.
Tyreek Hill?
But for how much longer, Scott? How much longer does Waddle have the potential to reach that top 3 receiver versus how long does Adams have?
I'm talking redraft specifically.
If you're talking straight redraft, sorry. Dynasty brain.
Get
Get this dynasty brain out here. No, this season, I'd make that trade. I'd make Waddle for Adams. I probably wouldn't make Tyreek Hill for Adams, though, just along with Scott.
Okay. All right, guys, let's go ahead and move forward here into some temperature check.
Temperature check.
That's really spicy. Holy shit.
All right, guys, temperature check is our segment of where we gauge fantasy football value and moving forward, what they're going to do for you based on our temperature scale of like a steak. Nate, you're the chef here. Explain the scale, if you would.
If you like medium or if you like well-done steak, you're a psycho. That means that the player they're cooked. They're done. Medium rare to rare is where you want a player to be. That is medium's kind of like, let's see what's happening. Medium well is more of they're probably going to fail, but there's still a little tiny shot they might.
Medium for the steak analogy. Medium is like, well, that's not quite what I asked for, but it's not bad enough for me to send it back to the kitchen.
Yep. Yeah. Good call. Good call there, Scott. All right, guys. First one here, Carson Wentz and company, back-to-back top 5 QB weeks for Carson Wentz. 27 PPR points for him once again here in week 2. Congratulations to him. And really, it's been a great performance if you had Curtis Samuel at all, if you spent the waiver priority on him last week, as well as Jahan Dotson. He's looked good too. Terry McLaurin letting you down a little bit, but we kind of had a feeling that could be the case here in Washington. Are you guys buying Carson Wentz here? Where do you have him on your scale, Scott?
I have him right in the middle as a medium. He's not medium rare yet just because I want to see a little bit more. I mean, pretty much every single one of us in the fantasy space has been trashing Carson Wentz for like 2 straight years. He's been the butt
like
of jokes.
4 for me. Yeah.
And so honestly, and including me, I'm not saying that I was the Carson Wentz truther. No, I wasn't. But it's been honestly a nice surprise how well he's done fantasy wise the first 2 games. He has the weapons, to allow it to continue, in my opinion. I want to see how he does with these next 2 in division, really tough defenses in the Cowboys and the Eagles. I want to see how those games go. If I'm streaming, I'm probably not picking him up to play against either of those teams. If he still shows some good fantasy success, maybe 20 or more fantasy points per game against those teams, then he'll really have my attention, and I'll be a little closer to medium rare.
Scott, I like what you said, where he's played well, and like none of us have loved Carson Wentz, but we're open to the fact that maybe this is a good fit for him. Maybe this offense is a good fit for him. Maybe he's a good fit for Jahan Dotson, for Logan Thomas. Maybe he's a good fit for this offense for Curtis Samuel. I'm not willing to close the door on the fact that Carson Wentz could be a QB1 tier talent this season in Washington. Maybe he's just great for Ron Rivera. There are quarterbacks that for no reason have big seasons. We're looking at Joe Flacco in New York having 2 great games. Sometimes it's just a system fit, and that's what it's been all along.
It's Bortles-esque for me.
Yeah.
Those years Bortles put up a ton of fantasy points.
Mm-hmm. Because it hasn't been pretty. Like last week, he struggled in the beginning, and that's why they were down so much versus Detroit, kind of doing some hobnot shit back in the back of the end zone. But he does have 650 passing yards through 2 games, 7 TDs, a couple picks, of course. But these were 2 great matchups, and that's something to think about too. There's the Jaguars, and this was Detroit. So. But I think the one thing to keep in mind that is different this year for the Washington quarterback as compared to recent years, they finally actually have a team. Like they've always just had Terry McLaurin and a bunch of Jags running around, just average guys. Now they actually have Jahan Dotson, who's a PPR machine. They also have Curtis Samuel, who can just be a dynamic playmaker for them in a lot of different ways that they haven't had. Ron Rivera knows how to maximize that. So I like the Washington offense. I'm going to continue to vibe and gel with them as we move forward here. Let's talk about another quarterback here. How are you guys feeling? And we can just quickly touch on this because I think we all think the same thing here. But Jalen Hurts, 33-point performance from him in week 2, 333 passing yards too. And, I think that was the question everyone had. We knew what he was going to do on the ground. Of course, he goes for 11 and 57, 2 touchdowns for him rushing. But great performance from him. He did it through the air. He got multiple receivers involved this week, not just A.J. Brown. Next on the schedule for him, it looks like pretty good lay of the land for him. Washington, Jacksonville, Arizona. If I'm a Jalen Hurts owner, manager, I am licking my chops right now, which I am in a lot of places. So I'm pretty happy. Scott, are you happy with this? Where are you at here?
Medium rare. I think it will be uncommon for me to give out a rare, but he's probably getting close to that. And here's another guy. I got a little excited talking about Jalen Hurts on a podcast over the offseason, but I've always stood by my issue was never that I think Jalen Hurts is bad or that I'm a hater and I think he's a bust or any of that. Mine was just I was a little frustrated with how quickly he was just ascending to this, no doubt about it, top 6 QB. Yep. Oh, just forget about it. It's going to happen. I thought the process was a little premature. What I'm seeing now is he's proving that's true. He's proving it's correct. I mean, he quieted some doubts about his passing in this past game. He was above 80% completion rate. He was above 9 yards per attempt, which is 2 yards ahead of where he was last year. So it was not dink and dunk stuff. He gets it done on the ground. The team is winning. They look like an unstoppable force in a lot of ways in the NFC. So I'm fully on board now. He's a QB1. He could be the QB1. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't end up being the QB1 if he stays healthy with the way he showed he could pass the ball with the weapons he has. And, he can 100 yards, 2 touchdowns rushing any game of the year. So maybe closer to rare.
I'm with you, Scott. And you know that I wouldn't say I was a hater. I wouldn't ever say I'm a hater in any situation.
But you were a doubter.
I was a doubter, for sure.
Better word.
We knew what we needed to see. We needed to see Jalen Hurts be more accurate in the passing game. We had seen him making poor decisions last season. 40% of his fantasy production was on the rushing side of things. When Sirianni said we want to throw the ball more, that concerned me with Hurts because I didn't know that he was going to get accurate quick enough to not get his confidence rattled. He's blowing me away, man. The dude put it together. He put in the work in the offseason and in training camp and in OTAs. He's got A.J. Brown, but he's spreading the ball out like you said. I'm all around impressed. Medium rare for now. If he gets this team to the playoffs and to a Super Bowl this season or sniffing a Super Bowl, I mean, you at that point, you can't argue with Jalen Hurts.
And I think, boys, this is one of those situations too. Like the offense has come together for the last 4 years. Philly's had atrocious wide receiving core. Now they have A.J. Brown. Devonta Smith's a hell of a number 2 wide receiver too. Mm-hmm. So like they're kind of putting that together. Quez Watkins, you can hit him once a game for a deep shot. Jalen Hurts hit it.
Goddard had a big game PPR.
Yeah. I mean, it's coming together for them here in Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts, he's leading that, and his rushing floor is so safe. Like, other than Josh Allen, if I offered you any other quarterback straight up, would you take it? Because I don't think I would.
I might take Lamar.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't. No way.
I might take Hurts. I might take Herbert.
Okay. Maybe not with the chest injury now. Maybe not with the chest injury, but
I'm not worried about that.
I would consider that.
That's
yeah,
true.
I would consider Herbert. That's a good call there, Scott. Last quarterback that we'll just kind of quickly touch on here, guys. Russell Wilson. Not a great week for him. He's QB 18 on the year after going 219 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception here in week 2. Only 5 rushing yards through week 2. So is his rushing upside, his rushing availability gone? That's kind of the question I'm left with because I thought he would run a little more. I had him projected for at least over 300 rushing yards. So I'm kind of, holding my breath over that. San Francisco, Las Vegas, Indianapolis, and the Chargers on the dock next for him. So it doesn't get easier. This was supposed to be the time it was going to be easy for him. Scott, are you concerned at all?
I mean, yeah, but I mean, Eisen was kind of, in the lower portion of the top 12 QBs. And that's still kind of where I see him. I'm not panicking that this start means he's just like this ineffective quarterback that's going to end up being droppable at some point, but it doesn't super surprise me. And a lot of it is that rushing thing, which started to dwindle a little bit while he was in Seattle. And Russell Wilson, without that rushing floor, it's just a little bit more volatile. His fantasy results are a little bit more volatile. There's not as much of a floor. And I mean, he's getting used to a new offense. It's a new city. I never saw him as like, okay, he's going to go there. He's immediately going to be 2016 Russell Wilson and be in the running for the overall QB1. I never saw that. So I'm not super. I think it's a slow start on a new team. So I'm medium.
Yeah, I'm the same, Scott. Being a Denver fan, obviously it's been a little bit harder for me to have a measured approach because I get emotional about these Broncos games. But that's the thing. We're 2 games in. Peyton Manning took 3 games to get acclimated to Denver, played well, got him to the playoffs, lost to the Ravens. Next season, he had the best year of his career. He threw for 55 touchdowns. He broke the NFL record for passing yards in a season. Like, I'm not panicked about this at all. I think he puts it together week 3, week 4, week 5. I don't care who the opponents are. This is just an all-out, flat-out good team, good defense, good line, good receiving core, good running backs. The only thing that does concern me is Nathaniel Hackett. His play calling and his clock management has been atrocious, and right now I am chalking that up to learning a new system, learning how to be a head coach. There's massive expectations with Russell Wilson coming in. But if they don't put it together, I mean, that kind of concerns me for the offense as a whole. because if this trend continues and they're playing poorly and they're barely beating the Texans, where it's like you're still questioning, are they going to win this game in the fourth quarter? I think this team starts to get rattled, and I think that hurts Cortland Sutton. It doesn't hurt Jerry Jeudy, but Jerry Jeudy's hurt.
He's day-to-day right now. We'll see what happens to Jeudy. Nate and Scott are saying just be patient here with Russell Wilson. If you do have better options, though, this week, I don't mind looking for him. It is Sunday Night Football, so maybe Russ shows up in prime time. He didn't week 1. Maybe he does here in week 2. Moving forward here, guys, let's quickly talk Dalvin Cook. Pretty poor performance for him. 6 for 17 yards on the ground, 4 for 6 in the receiving game, 19 yards for Dalvin Cook. He's still averaging 18.5 touches, but he barely has over 21 PPR points here in 2022. Are you guys concerned? I think it might just be a slow start for him. You can't really trade him, so I don't know what other advice we can give.
I mean, we knew this was going to be a pass-heavy offense with Kevin O'Connell. Dalvin Cook will get it going. They'll figure out his role. Medium. I'm not worried yet.
Yeah, I'm not really worried either. I mean, it's a little bit of recency bias. He had an atrocious game this past week, but I mean, basically the entire Vikings team had an atrocious game against Philly. Looking back to week 1, 20 rushes for 90 yards. Didn't get in the end zone, but he also got, I think, 3 or 4 targets. So I think it's chalked up to a slow start. Hasn't scored a touchdown yet, and just a abnormally atrocious result against the Eagles.
Yep. Rams backfield. This is another one I wanted to quickly touch on. Cam Akers goes 15 for 44 on the ground, 2 for 18 through the air. Our old guy Hendo, Darrell Henderson Jr., he goes 10 for 47 and 1 touchdown. Henderson was in for more snaps. He got some of the valuable goal line and red zone work. But guys, this does look like a true committee here. I said last week that I think you should have probably sold Darrell Henderson high while people thought he might get all the work. I hope you did. If you didn't, I think you need to ride it out until one of these guys has a big game and get out of it. More than likely, I think if Cam Akers can prove to be the guy, maybe they go to more of him at the end, because we've never seen Sean McVay do a true split. But maybe they just have 2 average guys at this point. That's what they have to do.
I think he summed it up.
It is kind of weird. I mean, I think I pointed it out before. The percentage of the RB1, the lead RB, and
isn't it like 80%?
It's not quite that high, but it's approaching workhorse. You know, he just doesn't typically do a committee. So I mean, almost the dead split this past week was a little surprising. I mean, Henderson was more effective with his carries. He scored the touchdown and he was on the field more. I'd still rather have him than Akers, you know, but it's a tough one because Akers was way more expensive. So it's not as easy. It's not as easy to walk that walk if you've got Akers, but I'm not excited for either guy.
Yeah, last week I traded Darrell Henderson and Chris Godwin for Deontay Johnson, Dawson Knox. Really, I was just going for the best player there, Deontay Johnson, just trying to kind of get out of Henderson while I could. Nate, are you pretty much in the same boat as Scott and I?
Yeah.
Okay. Couple more here for you guys. Garrett Wilson goes 14 targets for him on the night, 8 receptions, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns. This is a rookie we've kind of touted a lot this offseason. We loved him coming out of Ohio State. He's currently the wide receiver 12 after a 30-point PPR performance here. He finally got used outside too. They didn't hold him just the slot as we saw in week 1. Kind of remind me of Justin Jefferson a couple years ago when they moved him out of just the slot. And I think week 3, that was 2020. But guys, I'm really excited for Garrett Wilson here. He's got Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Miami, and Green Bay coming up next. Secondaries that have been exploited so far this offseason. Joe Flacco has thrown it for over 100 times this season, something to keep in mind that might be inflating these numbers. Are you holding on to Garrett Wilson? Or are you capitalizing here while the value's hot? Hot. We like
I mean, if
hot,
I have him,
hot,
I'm holding. He's in redraft. He's still on a fair amount of waiver wires. If he's on your waiver wire, I think he's the real deal. I never really doubted that he was the real deal. There was a talk of Elijah Moore, who I still think is a good wide receiver, but I never questioned Garrett Wilson's talent. But I think my counterpart, Nate, and I both put the same thing in the show sheet. I'm not necessarily going to be emptying my fab for Garrett Wilson in redraft because I have no idea what it's going to look like when Zach Wilson gets back.
And that's the thing, Scott. nail on the head. We know what he is with Joe Flacco now. But Joe Flacco outperformed Zach Wilson all camp and in
Flacco threw it
preseason.
like 60 times. Zach Wilson's
Yeah.
not going to do that.
And Flacco is doing it. He's effective. He's more accurate. He's smarter on the field. He's seen more than Zach Wilson has seen. I feel like we might be watching, stay with me here, Kurt Warner in Arizona play out all over again. It took him 2 seasons to get that team where it wanted to go. But if they can keep Flacco around for this year and next year and he can continue to do what he's doing, look.
They can't.
They can.
Nate,
The ultimate,
you
look,
keep
I feel like people I don't
you
fade
can't
all
go
rookie
spend a top
quarterbacks.
3 pick on someone and then bench him for Joe Flacco. I'm sorry.
Ryan Leaf, Jamarcus Russell. Look, dude, if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And the earlier you figure that out and cut ties.
You can't give a guy 16 games on a bad
But what
team.
if Flacco keeps winning? And what if Zach Wilson comes in for let's say
matter.
he comes back healthy. He plays 3 games and he is awful.
Doesn't matter. You're stuck
Flacco
with him.
Flacco goes 3.
Discussions in the old Twitter.
Flacco goes 3-1.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
here's the bottom
Okay.
line on Garrett Wilson, guys. If you're playing in a league with me, he's not on waivers because I have him in almost every single
All
league.
right.
And he's a guy, I had him in my projections as a top 18 guy. And it was a little spicy. It was a little hot. And I had him projected for more points than AJ Brown. I literally and that was
Okay.
one of those I had to dead look at myself in the eye. I'm like, is something wrong with me? And it's just one of those things that I believed in. And maybe it's just Joe Flacco's this inflated passing game. But I think Garrett Wilson could be the real deal. Sorry if you drafted Elijah Moore. Told you not to.
We all
sorry.
told you not to.
I don't know. I said, why would you pay for Elijah Moore at wide receiver 30 when you can get Garrett Wilson at wide receiver 45 plus? So not victory lapping because this could change in a heartbeat, but I think Garrett Wilson's the real deal, fellas. And I think we found
real quick before we move on, shout out to the round 1 healthy wide receivers in week 2. Every single one of them had a great game. It was really cool to see. Every single one of them.
Yep. Agreed with you guys. But now we have to talk about someone who, Scott, I know you're not going to be too happy about this, but it's Kyle Pitts. And it was our thumbnail for the episode. Is it time to trade Kyle Pitts?
Absolutely not.
Two receptions.
Absolutely not.
Three targets, 19 yards, back-to-back 3.9 PPR point performance. Scott, he still has name value. Maybe you won't get exactly the value.
Okay, here's the deal. Here's the deal with the name value thing. If you are thinking in your mind right now that Kyle Pitts is a bust, it's all hype, never going to be anything, then yeah, take advantage of the name hype, try and get what you can. I fully don't believe that. I fully believe he has inexplicably not been a big part of the offensive strategy. And here's the outcomes I see in the short term. So it applies to redraft. Either Arthur Smith gets his head out of his ass and starts getting the ball to Kyle Pitts, or Arthur Smith gets fired and somebody else comes in that says, hey, I have this dynamic talent on my field. I'm going to get him the ball. So that's what I see happening. I still do not question Kyle Pitts' talent. The results have been awful. I'm not going to argue that. They've been brutal for redraft. I have him everywhere. It's been brutal to watch. It's been very frustrating. But he is a guy I am willing to basically sync with this year if I need to. If I need to grab another tight end to play here and there, fine. But I'm not trading him. I'll trade for him. But dynasty wise, if you can buy low on Kyle Pitts right now, please do. Please do yourself that favor. I think it's a slow start. I think it's a muddled offense that's still figuring itself out. And I'm not ready to sell Kyle Pitts after 2 games.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Seth. If you're going to sell Kyle Pitts after 2 games, you cannot crap on me for wanting to be done with Zach Wilson already.
Totally different situation here. Here's my question. I'm just going to lay this out for our viewers, for our listeners, and I want to hear what they have to say. Last 13 games for Kyle Pitts, 57 receptions, 142.7 PPR points. So not bad. That's a solid tight end. Pat Freiermuth over his last 13 games, 58 receptions, 148.4 PPR points. So over the last 13 games, Pat Freiermuth has been a better fantasy tight end or just as good as Kyle Pitts has. And, I'm sorry, Scott, but I think that's I think Kyle Pitts got overdrafted again. I'd rather have Drake London rest of the season. If you said, here, take your pick at an Atlanta pass catcher, Drake London's at least shown me he can get double-digit targets and capitalize on it. Kyle Pitts is one career game over 20 PPR points. I'm just saying, the excuses got to stop. I put those exact stats in a tweet out earlier. Not one because no one wants to admit it to themselves that Kyle Pitts might not be that guy.
I can't argue that stat is not true. I mean, if you want to go out and trade Kyle Pitts for Freiermuth, be my guest.
I'm not saying do that.
I will be on the other end of that trade. Here's my deal with Pitts. Freiermuth is not winning you your weeks. He is outscoring Pitts, yes. So in a very black and white, cut and dry way, he has been the better choice. I still think Kyle Pitts has that ability, if he gets unlocked, which I think can happen and will happen, to be that difference advantage-making player at that position for you. Pat Freiermuth is never going to be that. He's going to be good. If you want to cut bait and redraft because you need to win games, I get that. I would love it if every stud, you had them and they were just studs the whole time. You didn't have to wait for it. Or if I could predict when everybody was going to become a stud. I can't. And Kyle Pitts is a guy I am willing to take my lumps on because I believe in it. I believe it's going to happen.
So Nate and Scott here, they're telling me once again, young buck, practice some patience, right? That's what you guys are saying to me. You're saying just hold up because
you're okay. Seth, your points are very valid though. I'm running out of excuses. You are correct.
Sure.
In redraft, I do believe I and a lot of other people did overdraft him. I just am not to the point yet where I'm okay, because the result hasn't come yet, it never will. I'm not there yet by any means.
It's understandable, and I appreciate your guys' take on it. We do have some in the scope to get to, talk a little waiver wire free agent fine. I'm seeing some new faces in the chat tonight. Thank you guys very much for tuning in tonight. If you enjoy this type of content, please give us a like, give us a subscribe, come back for us. We're here every Tuesday night, 9:30. Nate and I are back around Friday. We got fantasy NASCAR, fantasy golf coming your guys' way this year. But guys, let's go ahead and jump into it with some in the scope.
Requesting permission to engage.
In the scope. In the scope, you guys know the deal. We're going to talk surface level waiver wire additions, and we're going to talk some free agent fines that you can get for 0 to no fab, maybe a little bit of your fab. But let's talk about the surface waiver wire guys that everyone's going to be going after here on Tuesday night. Damian Williams, of course, stepping in for James Conner. I think that's a no-brainer if Conner misses time. Darrell Williams, Go ahead and scoop up Darrell Williams. Tyler Conklin, he's looking like a pretty good tight end right now for the Jets to pick up if you need some tight end help. Maybe if you have Kyle Pitts. Just kidding on that one. Sterling Shepard. Nate talked about it on Twitter last week that Sterling Shepard might be a guy. Kenny Golladay, I was on him, guys. I'll be honest, that was on me. He was the one that I took the side of. Scott, I know you were on Kadarius Toney, and it looks like these guys aren't even parts of the offense. So it looks like you probably should pick up Sterling Shepard, which is a shame, honestly. And I love Sterling Shepard. He's a great player, but my fear is in 3-4 weeks he's going to get hurt again. So
that's a fair concern.
So watch your fabbing with that, but consider them. Noah Brown for the Cowboys, we kind of spotlighted him a couple times so far this season. He's someone, if you need some wide receiver help in the interim, consider him. He's not really a long-term guy, I don't think. With Jalen Tolbert's going to be back eventually, James Washington. So keep that in mind. And then Jared Goff, he's a quarterback. If you do need some help and you don't want to if Carson Wentz isn't out there, if you don't want to roll with Wentz this week, given the matchup, Jared Goff, he has the weapons, ASRB, TJ Hawkinson, those boys. But let's go ahead and go with in the scope. These are the guys who I think we can get away with spending little to no fab on. Nate, you have a very deep one, so why don't you go ahead and throw them out there for us, please?
So as we kind of talked about earlier, the Detroit Lions offense is keeping in line with 2021. They're throwing the ball at about a 60% clip every game. Jared Goff is getting used to the offense in Detroit. Amon-Ra, DJ Chark, obvious choices. But he's spreading the ball out, which is kind of crazy. 71 passing attempts, 9 different players have caught passes in the first 2 games. Josh Reynolds, he is rostered in 0.2% of ESPN leagues right now. he's got 6 targets. He's got 4 catches. He's got a touchdown. He's got 66 yards. But here's the important part. He has played with Jared Goff his entire career. This is his 6th season. He's been with Goff every one of them. He moved to Detroit with Goff last season. He's getting kind of in the fold here, and he's getting some of the like medium value targets. The better he plays, he becomes a wide receiver 3 in this offense. We've seen Hawk kind of failing. He's not the Hawkinson everyone wanted him to be. I think Josh Reynolds is a really solid wide receiver 3. He's a flex play. He's not going to be a wide receiver 2 behind Amon-Ra and DJ Chark and DeAndre Swift, but he's a wide receiver 3. And I mean, honestly, if anybody else in your league is looking at them, it's because they're listening to our show, and you already know that. Go grab him on waivers. Don't put a penny of your fab on him. Don't use a high waiver wire priority unless you're hurting really bad and you have to have a wide receiver to start next week where you need like a guaranteed 5 to 7 points. But his upside as the season moves on, I mean, it could increase. And I think for his cost, if you have the spot, it's worth an ad.
I like it, Nate. My only concern with him long term is eventually I think all these pass catchers are going to take a little bit of a dip when Jameson Williams' first round pick comes back. So that's my only, but if you need someone for the next couple of weeks and you're in a deeper league, 3 wide receiver, maybe a 2 flex type of league, I'm okay with it. I don't love the 3rd pass catcher for Jared Goff, maybe the 4th or 5th, but I understand what you're digging for. This is in the scope, of course.
Of course. I'm looking for that super deep value. My question is, Jameson Williams is an ACL injury, correct?
Correct.
He's not going to be full speed till next season at the earliest. So
I mean, he might not be full speed, but he'll be out there. He'll be out there in November.
Yeah, but he's not a guy who's going to be effective enough to steal a ton of targets in this offense this year. If Dan Campbell's smart and this offense is already rolling with who they've got, you don't roll Jameson Williams out in any meaningful role this season. It doesn't make sense. And I'm done.
Scott, any thought on Jay Reynolds here?
I remember I had Josh Reynolds in a deep sleeper thing, I think last year, until Julio Jones signed with the Titans.
Yeah.
For the purposes of this being like a super deep, end of bench depth pick, I'm fine with it. They're 35 plus passes a game so far, 70% to wide receivers. He could provide some low end fantasy value. I don't know how consistent it would be. And I mean, Jameson Williams, we have no idea when he's coming back. I got him stashed in some IR spots and stuff like that, but I'm not really sure when he's coming back. So Who knows how much effect that'll have. But I mean, Seth said it. I mean, it is a 3rd wide receiver for Jared Goff.
Jay Goff, baby.
Year, but it's still Goff. So yeah, I mean, it's a super deep play. But I do like it. I think it's a little bit spicy.
Little.
Nate's known to throw out some spicy shit to us. We know that.
That's true.
Nate's like one of those. Nate's like one of those places. Like you go and like, what spice level do you want? Oh, I'll take like a 4, and then you get it back and it's just hot as all hell, and you're just, oh Jesus, like that's what Nate. That's what Nate brings to us weekly here at IBT, folks.
As a segue, if you want the reverse of super spicy takes,
yes,
we could move to mine where I may have forgotten the rules of in the scope.
I
forgot the rules a little bit. I forgot it was like super deep, like just scraping the waiver wire. But there is a purpose behind this, and so my in the scope, whatever the rules, is Gerald Everett. The name that has been mentioned, it is not an unknown name, and the reason for that is because, at least on ESPN, his ownership is still down at 30%. Now, I believe that's going to be much higher come tomorrow this time. But I think and also the reason I brought him up is because he's like one of the only people that I propped up and actually got right so far this season. So I wanted to talk about it. But I think for people that are ready to cut bait on Kmet, for people that are worried about Kittle's injury, for people that just, the later round tight end I picked up sucks. Gerald Everett has shown what I thought would happen. I thought he would be a heavily involved tight end for Justin Herbert, which he has been. He started off, the week 1 wasn't super promising. He basically split targets with Trey McKitty. He did get the touchdown, but only 3 catches. But last week in the track meet with Kansas City, and there's going to be lots of track meets in that AFC West, He had 10 targets, which tied the team lead, and he had 100% of the tight end targets and a 20+% target share. And he ended up with 71 yards, no touchdown, but I mean, he ended up with 13 PPR fantasy points, which I will take for a tight end that was being,
Certainly.
tight end 18, 19. If he's still on your waiver wire and you need tight end help, I would get him. I would grab him. That is my number one target on the team. I have Kmet. If you picked up somebody, Tanyan or some of these guys that you thought were going to be really good.
Cameron Brate.
Well, no, he's on the waiver wire in 99.99% of leagues.
I'm in a couple of those 0.1ers. I'm going to be honest, and it's me.
Anyway, I've always liked Gerald Everett, and I think he's finally has the chance to be a number one tight end on his team, but with a really good offense, not the Seahawks of 2021.
I like Jerry Everett a lot here. Scott, definitely like one of those guys who's kind of broken out a little bit, but still out there in a good bit of leagues. And he looked freaking sweet in that number 7. Like, let's just be honest. I haven't really seen a single-digit tight end number. Like, that's fucking sweet.
No, I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts is number 8.
Oh, okay. Well, Kyle Pitts doesn't catch touchdowns, so it's irrelevant here.
He's more of a wide receiver.
Yeah, that is also true. Guys, I'll round us out here. Want to thank everyone again for tuning in tonight. It's been awesome debating with you guys. I love when we get in the season because we actually can like talk more shit to each other because we actually have like data to back us up. So, like I was right all
like when Kmet goes for 100 and a tutty next week.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go here, guys. My in the scope, and it's just like if you need a running back depth piece who could grow into something more. Think about Jarrett McKinnon from the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
Currently rostered in 13.6% of ESPN leagues. And listen, like I want to see more volume for him. Only averaging 7 touches per game. Comes off a performance with 34 yards on the ground and then 6 targets, 5 for 31 and 1. So, he hasn't been spectacular. He's gotten it done. But what I really like from him, in addition to being RB31 on the season, is his 43% snap percentage. That's his highest among RBs in the Kansas City backfield. So he's playing more than CEH, playing way more than Isaiah Pacheco, and he has 11% target share, which is like on pace with MVS pretty much. So you're pretty much getting MVS with a couple rushing attempts at your running back position, which I'm all right with that. Like top 7 among RBs in fantasy points per touch, 1.25 fantasy points per touch. So he's efficient with what he's getting. Top 6 in yards created per touch. So again, just being a really efficient back. He's got Indy, Tampa Bay, Las Vegas, and Buffalo coming up. Specifically, I think Tampa Bay, Las Vegas, and Buffalo could be a little more of a shootout game. You could see more out of Jarrett McKinnon. So in that case, like he's a guy I'm going out. I might put $1 of fab. I might put no fab. Just put a 0 claim in for him, or just grab him off the wire tomorrow if I can. I liked him last week too, but he was playing on Thursday night, and I wanted that bench flexibility, so I didn't get him in a lot of leagues. But I'm going back after him here in week 3. That's Jarrett McKinnon, and if anything happens to CH, guys, he's a very valuable player as well.
Absolutely, I like this call. I've been on Jarrett McKinnon since the season started, so everything you said.
I just like that we're still talking about Jarrett McKinnon. I feel like we've been
right
because he's a guy I rooted for ever since he came into the league. I believe it was with the Vikings
back in 1991.
Yeah,
something like that. Okay. Yes, it was the Vikings though.
Yeah, not 1991.
92. Sorry.
So anyway, no, but I like the call. And I mean, if anything happens to any of the other running backs, his usage is just going to go up. I did not know that about the snap share, which by itself doesn't seem like a really big snap share, but in that Kansas City system, and if he's leading the way, got to be on the field to get those fantasy points. So I like the call. Like, I mean, the RB waivers are pretty barren right now. At least the ones I've been looking at, not a lot of great options. So if you're looking for some RB help, some RB depth, especially in full point PPR, this is a guy. Yeah. $1 maybe. I agree.
Yeah. Dollar make me holla. You know how it goes, guys.
I don't agree with that,
but well, guys, I want to appreciate everyone being here tonight. The IBT family for tuning in. Scott and Nate, your guys' expert opinions tonight, some great back and forth discussion. We hope we help fantasy managers as they prepare for week 3. Want to thank our audio editor, Kyle, in the back end as always. And guys, if you need more of us, go over to inbetweenmedia.com. We're getting things rolling. We got so much content, great content coming for you 7 days a week now. Nate, you and I will be back on Friday. We got some more special guests coming. We're going to talk matchups. We're going to talk start sit, answer some listener questions as well. It's going to be a lot of fun, my friend.
We got it all, man.
Sorry, that was
fine. I was like, did I talk out of turn? I'm excited for Friday. Let's cut to the credits. We're done.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, so much. Have a great week 3. Peace. Your destination for both some feel-good lifestyle advice and some fantasy football advice.